Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news. On a serious note, before we get into anything though, can we put a missing persons report out for Zayn Miassi? Haven't seen him since around half-time in the Arsenal game yesterday. And thoughts and condolences with him and Arsenal on this morning. But hello and welcome to the United Stand. I'm a little bit sore this morning. I was not in anything sinister way. I mean, my head's a bit sore. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it last night. You know what? We've had a really odd, I would say, 4 years at United since the last final. But I had a few drinks last night and we're in a final. We're in a final. I think that's something to celebrate. So I am really, really pleased about that. We're going to talk about SANCHO. We're going to talk about Solskjaer. Solskjaer very angry. We're going to be talking about the future for Manchester United and building it out. But lots to get into on the morning show as ever. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is actually really angry. He's blasted his bosses. We wish it was the Glazers. He's talking about Premier League bosses, and he's talking about the 3 games we've got to play in 4 days next week. So Sunday Villa, Tuesday Leicester, Thursday Liverpool, and he said it's ridiculous, it's impossible, and he's right. He's right, and we wake up this morning and we're in a good mood because we're in the Europa League final. But he is right. It is a joke. He says it's decisions made by people who don't play football. The task is impossible. We have just got to get on with it, but it's baffling, and it is baffling, and he is right, and I do agree with him on that. So he's absolutely correct to be angry about that. In relation to the bosses, apparently, and we'll find out today because Ollie's press conference will be coming out later on around lunchtime. We'll have a video for that. United now refusing to answer questions about protests or the Glazers, which is not communication, is it? And also, it's a week since the letter went in from Must demanding a response from Manchester United in relation to the points raised by the fans. So again, expect silence from there. So United's tactic again seems to be bury your heads in the sands and hope it all goes away. And, maybe that will work. It has worked in the past, but we'll have to wait and see on that. What I would say about last night, though, and I think a few people will have their thoughts on last night, we are in the final. But what I would say is that, look, check the player ratings on my match reaction last night. There were some fantastic performances from De Gea and Cavani, and I thought Bruno played well. But the rest of the team were really substandard. And I think that what we learnt last night is that maybe Solskjaer, maybe some of these players, they're thinking, they're believing their own hype maybe. They're running before they can walk. There's been definitive progress this season. But how much of that definitive progress when it matters has been down to class players? Bruno has carried us a lot this season. Cavani, although I think he should have played more, you think about some of the goals Cavani's actually scored this season when it's mattered. I mean, right back as far as Southampton, he basically won us a game 3 points there. And then De Gea last night showing that any thoughts that he's past his best and should be moved on are very, very dangerous. And I think that, when you look at, I know that from the dressing room there is an indication, and I'm not going to name names, that certain players would like to see Dean Henderson in goal and De Gea sold. And that's from people in the dressing room. So I'm not going to say who it is because it's not fair, because, I don't 100% know if it is true. But there was a story 2 or 3 weeks ago about it as well, to be fair. So there's probably some truth in it. But I would say to those players who are looking to change the guard, and I would say to Solskjaer who are looking to change the guard, next season's going to be ridiculously hard. Like Chelsea will have Tuchel from the start. And I think their points accumulation will push us for second. Man City, Liverpool are going to be back. Man City aren't going anywhere. So top 4 next season, conceivably, United could be fighting for 4th. You don't know. So to make changes that don't need to be changed, I think what last night showed is that if you didn't have De Gea and you didn't have Cavani, I think Roma would have done what many thought wasn't possible. I think they would have come back. They had over 20 shots. They could have scored 4 goals easily, and I think they could have knocked us out. But we didn't get knocked out, and over the 2 legs, we did deserve it because of the class players. David De Gea, Cavani. What De Gea and Cavani have in common is that they've been doing it for over a decade at the top level. And, you can't, although I think that we have got players for the future, don't turn your back on the past. And maybe Solskjaer's realising that. Cavani is going to stay. That's going to be announced in the next couple of weeks. It may even be announced today, because if I was United, I would announce it very quickly for some positivity. He is going to stay, and maybe Solskjaer's waking up to this. Last night he came out and said that, I'm lucky I've got one of the best goalkeepers in the world, talking about De Gea. He's got a striker like Cavani. These players are worth their weight in gold. That level of experience is really important. Some people say this is why we keep Mata, but Mata doesn't contribute on the pitch. He hasn't done for probably 3 years. Consistently, no way near. So, but De Gea and Cavani are players that you can chuck into Europa League semi-final like that, where, let's be honest, a lot of United's heads freezed. You know, some so-called leaders, their heads freezed last night. And I'd include, I thought Luke Shaw didn't have a good half. I don't think Maguire had a good game. I don't think Pogba had a good game. I don't think Fred had a good game. You know, we froze a bit. It's not about individuals. We froze as a team. But Cavani and De Gea and Bruno didn't. So these players are going to be very, very important for us, I think, over the coming season next year. And I wouldn't be, you know, if I was Ollie this morning, I'd be like, you know what? What if, I mean, look, I don't want to talk about Henderson or De Gea because I like them both. But what if we sell De Gea and Henderson's the goalie next year and he has a bad start? Oh, Sam Johnston come in goal. It's like, why? You know, it's a difficult decision. I don't want to say which way Ollie's going to go, but look, I think that was one of the best goalkeeping performances of the season across Europe by De Gea yesterday, and he still let 3 in. It just shows you what a great job he had. But what I'm saying is, let's not forget. Let's not start moving on. You know, Cavani's going to stay. I actually thought Cavani should go, but you know, even I've changed my opinion on that. I think Cavani's shown how important he is, that leadership, class, you know, in those games where you need it. I don't think Cavani should go, and I don't think De Gea should go either. I think we need to hold on to those players because I don't feel yet that your Luke Shaws and your Harry Maguires are ready to step up. I don't think they are yet. I think that was a semi-final yesterday and they were a little bit off. Well, De Gea and Cavani and Bruno weren't, and I think Maguire and Shaw can be leaders of the future, but they're not quite yet. You know, they're not quite past that bottling the semi-final stage, are they? Whereas obviously you've got players that are, and we need to grow. I still think we've got a lot of growth to go in this team, so it'd be silly to start breaking that team up. Mark, I do think that Dean Henderson is great, but David De Gea is that special something. Ollie even said, yes, he's one of the best keepers in the world. I think we failed at number 6 yesterday. That's where the goals came from, says AJ Singh. Well, I want to talk about some of the transfer stuff, but I do want to talk about that. I'd have to resign and say that I don't know what everyone thinks about Paul Pogba, but I think Paul Pogba's going to have to play on the left in the attack. He's been playing really, really well there. I don't agree with it. I think that Pogba's best position is in the midfield, but we blatantly do not have a CDM, and I cannot be a hypocrite on this, and I don't think anybody can. All season I've said that McFred basically play together because it's 2 people doing one person's job, protecting the back 4, and that's what they do. It's very simplistic. It's basically like putting a couple of batteries into a Duracell bunny and saying run off, and that's what we do. We cannot play Donny van der Beek or Paul Pogba in that midfield 2 because the person who plays next to them can't do the job as a CDM on their own. This is why we pick McTominay and Fred. This is why we need a CDM, because next season we're going to do the same thing again. For me, Paul Pogba should be playing in a midfield 2 with licence to get forward. But when he played there yesterday, he can't get forward because he's getting overrun because Fred can't do the CDM job. Now it could be McTominay or it could be Matic. We'd still get overrun. So what Ollie does is he puts Pogba in the attack and he puts McTominay and Fred there because they are basic players who together can shield the back 4. And of course, shielding the back 4 is very important because like last night, if you don't shield those centre-backs, they get exposed. Maguire and Bay got exposed. Maguire and Lindelof would get exposed. This is why he's picking McFred. It's 2 players doing one person's job because he hasn't got one person to do that job. Therefore, he can't put Pogba or Van der Beek in the midfield because we'll get overrun. We haven't got a CDM and we haven't got a centre-back pairing that's good enough. We're crying out, and I'll keep saying it, and some of you will disagree, some of you will agree. We're crying out for a top-class CDM and a top-class centre-back, and that will revolutionise the side. You then could play Van der Beek next to the CDM. You could play Pogba next to the CDM. But at the moment, we're having to play Pogba in a sort of inverted left midfield position because we can't play him in his position that he's played for most of his career because we haven't got a CDM to do it. And we saw it again last night. And I know De Gea got I know Fred got an assist, but that midfield was swamped, absolutely swamped, and we're just going to have to stick with McFred till the end of the season, I'm afraid, and hopefully buy a CDM. But if he doesn't buy a CDM, I think we're going to continue next season being a team that grinds out results because you can't be an expansive team when you're playing a back 6. And we do play a back 6. I don't care what anybody says. We play a back 6. We stick McFred in front of the centre-backs and then we cream off clean sheets saying, oh, we're brilliant, but we're a defensive side. He's got to buy a CDM. But what I would say as well is I agree with what he's doing. I don't like it, but tell me what else he can do in that midfield at the moment. And that's the thing. You sort of come to realise why he's doing it. I don't agree with it, I don't like it, but what else can he do? Yesterday we saw Pogba and Fred there. I'd much rather see them than McTominay and Fred, but you can't shield your defence. They get run all over. So he's got to do it, but we've got to buy a CDM. And I just want to say as well, I think Solskjaer's done a fantastic job. Second place in the league, into Europa League final. It's not where we want to be, but it's not where we thought we'd be this season. So there is progression there again. And I hope that over the next 3 games, which is a ridiculous... I agree with Ollie's anger. And he is angry. He said, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we've got to play 3 games in 4 days. And we have got to do that. But, I think he's done very well. And also, just quickly before we talk about Sancho... There is an issue with Ollie. He's got to rotate more. Brandon Williams, Tellez, Eric Bailly, Van der Beek. They didn't play well last night, but so much of it was down to match sharpness. They've not been used enough. You can't chuck players into a first team game when they've not started for weeks. You've got to keep them fresh. He doesn't make his subs quick enough, and he doesn't rotate the team enough. So that when you've got like 4 games in 7 days and you have to rotate, the players you're relying on, they're so rusty. Tellez was rusty. Williams was rusty. Van der Beek was rusty. So we've got to rotate more. Talking about transfers, though, interestingly, I saw this morning that Mourinho would like Van der Beek. I think some people would probably do that deal after the way Van der Beek played last night. But I believe in Donny. I think he's a good player. I think he's very rusty. Cavani's making Pogba play better. Hopefully a few players will have leave to roam, i.e. Matic. Sorry, Ricky, says Reese. Well, apparently Mourinho's in talks to take Ricky to Rome. I'll tell you what, Flex. I'm getting on now. I've had enough of Manchester weather. I'll have a bit of Rome. I'll go to Rome. I'll go to Rome with Matic and Mata. And I'll tell you what, Ollie wants me on the Jose wants me on the bench. He wants me on the bench. He's seen my clips on Twitter and he wants me on there. So listen up. I'll tell you what, I'll have a bit of the old sangria and a bit of the sun over in Rome. Yeah, sangria's in Spain, Ricky. Well, you can still get it. You can still get it. Anyway, let's go on with the show. Love Ricky, of course. So, Sancho, David Ornstein, very good journalist. He's been talking about Sancho and Manchester United this morning. A little bit of an insight into where we may be, actually. Bailey says, I love you, Bruno, and it's quite all right. I need you, Bruno, to light up Old Trafford. I love you, Bruno. Score some goals when you play. There's probably a tune to that, Bailey, but I don't know what it is. But yes, so David Ornstein's been talking about Jadon Sancho. And basically what he's saying is that deal's on for Manchester United. If they want to do that deal is on. He said that the talk is that United are looking at a centre-back and a striker, but that could change. And if it does change and they do go for Sancho, it's very much a deal that they can do. I saw something about Andre Silva again, the Portuguese ex-AC Milan striker who's now on Eintracht Frankfurt, scoring a lot of goals in the Bundesliga. £35 million. But I never understood the striker situation. If Cavani's staying, we don't need a striker. So therefore, go for Sancho. But I absolutely cannot understand why centre-back and striker were ever the priority anyway. It worries me. It does worry me. I think Solskjaer's doing a great job, but I wonder about, whether he's banging his head against the ceiling now or whether he can break through that ceiling into the attic and out into the sky. The sky's the limit. Because I do look at that team and I do look at the lack of rotation and I do look at the fact that if you take De Gea out the team yesterday and put an average goalkeeper in, we probably lose that game and we go out of Europe. So look, we're all bigging up a goalkeeper again. We were bigging up a goalkeeper 5 years ago. He was winning Player of the Year every year because we weren't a very good side. And there is a reality bite with the brilliance of being in a final. There is a bit of a reality bite that, on a different day, that could have been very different. I think Roma played brilliantly in the Old Trafford in the first leg. They were winning 2-1 at half-time. We had an amazing second half and we lived off that. And even Ollie admitted that. So we've got to look at how we improve. And CDM is so important. Centre defensive midfield is so important. We've got to buy one. If we don't buy one, we're going to stand still. Look at Kante for Chelsea on Wednesday night. And I think Jorginho does a good job. And they've got Kovacic. Look at Man City. They've got Rodri. He didn't even play the other night. They played Fernandinho at 36. They've got Gundogan. They've got quality. We've got McTominay, Fred and Matic. We've got to get better quality in that CDM position. I don't know why we're looking at strikers and centre-back. Well, centre-back's important. But I think, like David Ornstein says, striker and centre-back, maybe a backup right back seems to be the list of Manchester United's priorities. But I think that list has probably changed now. I think with Cavani staying, cross off a striker, they'll probably go for Sancho. But we need to get a CDM. It's so important. That team will change so much if you get a top quality CDM and a top quality centre-back. Gimme, Edison Cavani, give him the ball, watch him score all the goals. He's our Uruguayan Robin Hood, says Matt. Thanks for that super chat, Matt. Camavinga's better than Rice, says Nikhil. I don't think we would go for a player like that. Vandy Candy says Scott McTominay's underrated. Well, I'm not gonna dress it up, mate. I don't think he's underrated at all. I think that I don't think our just because our midfield was trash last night doesn't mean that McTominay and Fred are the answer. As I said, I'm watching teams with Kante in the midfield. I'm watching teams with Fernandinho in the midfield. They are streets ahead. I think McTominay and Fred are in a battle with Southampton's midfield. I think, Kante and Fernandinho's performances are just on a different level to anything that we've got. We desperately need a CDM. Scott McTominay's not a CDM. Fred's not a CDM. And Matic is not a CDM at this level anymore. We need to buy a CDM. Scott McTominay's a box-to-box player anyway. So saying he's underrated, he's being played out of position for a start. But look, it depends what your standards are. If you think that second place and fighting for top four and scrapping it out in the Poundland Champions League is what United should be doing, then, crack on. Let's play McFred next year. But I think we need better. I think it's so obvious. Kante isn't a CDM, says Ahmed. Okay, and your mum's not a female. And Scotty is a decent box-to-box player, says Luke82. And there's so many cheap, underrated CDMs that could help us. Why not try and get Ndidi, says Ishmael. Scott McTominay is the Scottish Perlo, says George Kyle. And what CDMs should United go for, says John. Bissouma can do that job. Declan Rice can do that job. That's 2 straight away. Like, if there's nobody, I understand it, but that's 2 straight away. David Hare is one of the few leaders in his team. He got stripped of the captaincy previously, speaking out about the team performance. He was screaming at his defenders last night. They weren't up to scratch. I know, and he couldn't get them going, Shanasti. He could not get them going at all. He couldn't do it. So, it really is. Can I just say, on Kante, I do get what that person's saying, but the reality is Kante plays next to Pogba for France and they win a World Cup. Pogba's not a CDM. Kante is the one with the defensive responsibility. At Chelsea, Jorginho probably sits deeper than Kante, but they play with a 2. And Kante does like to get forward, and he got forward a lot against Real Madrid. So I do understand where that person's coming from. But what I'm saying is, if Manchester United had Kante, I'd tell him, don't wander forward too much, just run the midfield, and he would do it. And we'd have a very good midfield. You're right, Kante can get forward, but I think he's still, if you tell him to do the job of a CDM, he's one of the best in the world. Don't you think Fred and McTominay can adapt to that role, given the right coaching? If a new CDM comes in, who do you let go from the current midfield? No, I don't. Akshay, are you actually the Glazers in disguise? Do you think Fred and McTominay can adapt to that role, given the right coaching? Mate, it's 2 average players doing one person's job. What we're basically doing with McTominay and Fred is picking 2 players that Declan Rice could do on his own. That's what we're doing. They have no qualities of a centre defensive midfielder. They don't pick up the runners. Their passing range isn't very good. Their positional sense isn't very good. They're not very good. But when you get 2 people to do one person's job, obviously it's going to make you better defensively. But we're so defensive when we play with them. We need a CDM to release the other player. You don't need 2 people to sit like we sit. And obviously the big reason we're doing it is because if you get through that McFred, you're straight at the centre-backs and they get exposed like they did last night. Okay, let's move on. I'd give Martial 1 more year. He's too inconsistent for me. Shame he had the quality, but he shows the other team his emotion too much, easily targets, says Reese. I think on Anthony Martial, me and Flex spoke about it on the show last night. Where I am with Anthony Martial is that I came into the season, he was player of the year and he was one of my favourite players, and we bought Cavani and I was like, well, Martial's number 1, Cavani's the bench player. Where we are now is that Cavani is definitely the number 1, Martial is the bench player. Now, if Martial wants to stay next season and work for his first team spot, I want him to stay because Cavani's number 1 and Martial's the backup. If Martial doesn't want to do that, then you sell him. But I'm more than happy to go into next season with Cavani, Martial, Greenwood and not buy a striker and then spend the money on a CDM. That's what I would do. I think we're all right for another year because Cavani's going to go in a year and then we're going to need to buy a striker anyway. So I think you park your striker tendencies for a year and keep with Cavani. And as I said, I probably mentioned it a little bit quietly, Cavani is going to confirm that he's staying at Manchester United any time in the next 3 weeks. It could be today, it could be next week. So, you know, he will be confirming that he's staying at Manchester United. And they'll definitely want to make a big deal of this. I would be surprised if United don't put it out there today, because they need some positivity. He scored 2 goals last night. Cavani's staying, it's positivity, and God, United need some positivity at the moment. So I think that they will announce that very soon. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it today, but maybe he's not agreed yet. Pau Torres, I want to talk about Pau Torres. Donny's very capable of breaking the opposition play and has enough quality to attack. Pair him with Declan and Didi and you might be set, says Vikram. I think you make a good point about Donny van der Beek. I'm not sure whether many of you watched him yesterday, but I just look at Donny van der Beek. He's quite a stop-start sort of player, and I just think on the wing he's probably a little bit lost. I think he is a player that needs some fluidity, and I think making tackles, closing down, I think in the midfield he'd be a better player, but he looked miles off the pace yesterday. I know some people said he did quite well, but I thought he looked miles off the pace, and I think he's got a tendency to play a simple pass. He does pass it backwards a lot, and I just think that's a lack of confidence. I just don't think he's got any confidence. I don't think Telles has got any confidence. I don't think Brandon Williams has got any confidence, and I think that's just because they've not been used enough. They need some game time. They really do. Donny needs more forward passes and fluidity, says Alaf. I agree with that. Pau Torres is going to be in the final for Villarreal, and this is a player that Manchester United have been looking at. Fernandinho is still the best in that position, says Robert McCormack. He was fantastico on Tuesday night, Robert. He really was. 36, and I think Man City will keep him for another year, because 36 or not, those players are worth their weight in gold. They really are. So Pau Torres to Manchester United. I mean, I don't know whether this deal's going to happen. A lot of people are very impressed with him because they've seen him play a couple of times now instead of just listening to reports about him. I must admit, I've only probably seen him play a couple of times this season myself. I knew a little bit about him a year ago, but I haven't really watched La Liga. I mean, look, Manchester United need a top quality centre-back. A top quality centre-back. For me, they should be doing everything they can to get Varane, but they do need a centre-back. I mean, look, Eric Bailly signs a new contract. His next game after signing a new contract, you're like, yeah, that's not gone well. But for me, I mean, I do like Eric Bailly, but yesterday he was awful. He was absolutely dreadful, and that's worrying, isn't it? Because it's like, I looked at that team when he picked it last night, and I was quite excited. I think one of our best performances of the season was Everton away in the Carabao Cup, and that was pretty much the team we picked last night, and it was dreadful. The mindset wasn't right. We looked rusty, as I said. But we do need a top quality centre-back, because if you think Maguire and Bailly are the future, they're quite clearly not at the highest level, are they? So we do need to sign a centre-back. Marco says, I don't think Pau Torres is the one. I think the centre-back situation and the CDM position are just so important, and you've got to get it right. I saw a few people last night sort of going in on Harry Maguire saying he's not good enough. For me, I think Harry Maguire's season will be next year. I think that's the one where you look at him. Season 3, that's the one where he's got to be delivering consistently. I mean, he's the captain, and I thought he started the game quite well yesterday and then just got worse in the second half. But I don't think Maguire's had a terrible season. I think he started off badly and he's got better since Christmas. But I think next season, with a proper centre-back next to him, he can't afford to be making the mistakes maybe that he's made this season. So I would reserve judgment on Maguire, but we definitely need a top-class centre-back. Love Donny van der Beek, but if our style of play doesn't suit him, Varane swap. Rice would be epic, but I really want Neves. Better passer than Basuma. Wouldn't mind Torres, says Robin. Well, yeah, he's another one, isn't he? I mean, I'm not so sure about Ruben Neves, but a lot of you do quite like him. Bailly had COVID and hasn't played for a while, says Zach. Yeah, and that could be a reason. He looked way off the pace yesterday, to be fair. The fullbacks changing invited Roma on in the second half, says George Carl. Yeah. And you're right, George, because Telles and Brandon Williams haven't played anywhere near enough football, so they were exploited. They made the job hard for the centre-backs. Having said that, the Dzeko goal, Maguire loses him and Eric Bailly doesn't go to him, so that's on the centre-backs. You've only got one player to mark, and the two centre-backs were pretty poor yesterday. I thought Dzeko dominated them, and that's not good, is it? That's not good, because Bailly's good in the air and Maguire's good in the air, and Dzeko's got no pace. So, you need to do a little bit better than that. Just on Erling Haaland, he's been mentioned as well by Sky this morning that Dortmund would want £150 million for Erling Haaland this summer. I mean, Manchester United were never going to do that deal anyway. The only thing I can... God. Excuse me. Ugh, don't know what went on there. The only way that Erling Haaland was coming to Manchester United, I think, was if this Super League was going to happen and you were going to get, was it £300 million every club was getting to go in the Super League? So I just think with Erling Haaland and the tour of Mino Raiola where he was going to Spain and England, I just think that all the teams he was talking to were going to be in the Super League. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United. And Raiola was probably walking around, rubbing his hands together, thinking, I'm in the money, because... who can afford Erling Haaland now at 150 million? Nobody. But I think it was all about the Super League money. And the Super League was 300 million just to go into it. So suddenly everybody can afford him. So United, no chance of getting Erling Haaland. I don't know why it's been pushed by credible outlets that United are in for Haaland, because we're not. We're not. Cavani's going to stay. Mark, do you see Telles coming through the ranks and getting better next season? Thoughts on Brandon Williams? Would you loan him out next season, says Abhishek. Brandon Williams should have gone on loan in January. I think Brandon Williams wanted to go on loan in January, but was kept because we didn't have any cover for Wan-Bissaka, and there's then not been used. So I've said this before about Brandon Williams. It's a very frustrating situation for him, because I don't think he's even 20 yet, but he's lost a year of his career. He breaks into the team over a year ago. Looks like he's a bright player for the future, and hasn't been used this year. So he's lost a year of his career. And if you think about it, a footballer's career can be 12 years, and he's lost a year of it. He's lost nearly 10% of his career not playing. He's got to go on loan next year. As for Telles, it's difficult for Telles because it's his first season. It's not like having Danny Rose, who's, played in the Premier League for most of his career, and if Luke Shaw gets injured, he can come in and do a job. Telles hasn't even adapted to the Premier League, but he's the understudy to Luke Shaw. Telles is a difficult one. I think he will be here next year, but he's not played anywhere near enough football. Ollie's just got to rotate more. You can't chuck these players in for the first time in a month and then expect them to perform. They were rusty. A lot of them were rusty. Bay, Van der Beek, Telles, Brandon Williams. They were miles off the pace and they didn't play well, but I have sympathy with all of them because I think it's because they've not been used enough. As Jose wants Matic, I think Phillips from Leeds would be cheaper than Rice, says Daniel. I don't know how easy it would be to do a deal with Leeds. I'd prefer to get Basuma, to be honest with you. Eduardo says we can't rotate when we've got no depth. Okay, Eduardo, we've got Telles at left back. We've got Bailly and Twansebi at centre back. We've got Matic in the midfield. We've got Van der Beek in the midfield. We've got Diallo. We've got Dan James. We've got Juan Mata. We've got Brandon Williams. We've got loads and loads of rotation options. He's relied on 13 players for over 50 games, basically, and it's not good enough. We do need better quality players, but there has been rotation options. There's been plenty. I mean, Twansebi's done very well when he's played, and he's not been given opportunities. So we could have rotated it. Basuma's not a CDM, he's a centre midfielder, says Angel. Maybe watch him a little bit more, Angel, because you're exposing yourself as probably not watching him play that much. He can definitely play in a midfield two with defensive responsibility. And he can definitely take the ball off the back four, and he can definitely play that role better than Fred and McTominay. So, look, some people might not fancy him for it, but he can definitely do it. Twansebi should go on loan. I think he might be going more than on loan. I think he might be going completely. Rashab says, do you think Cavani's going to stay? Yes, I do. And I think it's going to be fantastic for him to be able to play in front of the Old Trafford crowd next year, because he's going to get a lot of love. I don't think he realises what it's going to be like. What about Lingard next season, says Annika. I mean, he's got to go. He's got to go, in my opinion. Still no sign of Zayn, Mikey. Ehab says, Basuma is a CDM. Please go watch Man United versus Brighton again. I recommend you go watch that game. Well, yeah, this is it, Ehab. People see him playing 1 or 2 games and think he's not a CDM. He basically marked bloody Bruno out of the game when we played them. And Bruno's a number 10. So, a DM most are overlooking is Paulinho from Sporting in Portugal. He's literally a younger Matic, 24 years of old age, solid defensively and a solid passer, says Ryan. Yeah, but that's the sort of signing that Pep will do. We won't pick up on that. Would you get Rafinha in, says John? I'd get Rafinha in if we got a CDM and a centre-back. If we've only got so much money to spend, I wouldn't get Sancho. But I do think they're going to go for Sancho because United need to do something significant. Unfortunately, if United have got £100 million to spend this summer, they'll spend it on Sancho because they'll go number 7 shirt, sell the shirt, everybody's happy, Glazer's out, is over. I'd spend 100 million with 50 on a midfielder and 50 on a centre-back because that's better for the team. But as we know with United, they go for marquee signings to shut the fans up. So, and that's you're never going to win a title if you don't build a team. So yeah. Yash says that do you think, having seen yesterday's performance, Ollie will be reluctant to rotate the team next week? Mate, he's got to. He's got to rotate the team next week. How do you not rotate the team next week? We're playing Sunday lunchtime, Tuesday night and Thursday night. You can't not rotate the team. It's impossible for anybody to play. Well, it's not impossible. I've done it. But it kills you. And for professional athletes to do it, it's dangerous. Because the intensity of a Premier League game is so fast and so physical. You cannot play 3 games in 4 days. You can't. He's basically got to pick a different team for Leicester. And it's going to be a real challenge. It will be a difficult game. Just stick De Gea in goal and we'll get a point. And I also think that De Gea has got to play in the Premier League next week. You can't just say Dino's the Premier League goalkeeper. He's got to play De Gea in one of those games. Rotate it, go one, the other, one, the other. I know it's not ideal, but De Gea needs to be playing games. Just a very quick one, actually. Who would you, if you had to sell one of the keepers, get in the live chat, who would you sell in the summer? If you had to sell Henderson or De Gea, who would you sell? I mean, for me, I am a bit hungover, Jason. For me, I would keep De Gea and I would sell Henderson. It's a difficult one, but I just think that even I had my eyes opened up last night, because I think when I saw it last night, it's the quality. It's the quality that, most people are saying sell Henderson, which is it's a little bit more split than I thought. It's a little bit more of a landslide for selling Henderson than De Gea than I thought. I like Henderson, but I think what I saw last night was that that's a massive game and that's a big game performance. I don't know whether Henderson can do that. I know he can do it at Sheffield United, but can he do it in the big games like that? Like, I think, De Gea last night reminded me of the Emirates a few years ago, where they battered us and he was just unstoppable. And that sort of goalkeeping is leadership. And I'm like, why would you sell that? He's only 2 years into a 5-year deal and he's our best paid player. Why would you sell that? I just think it's a mistake waiting to happen. Henderson would need to be the best goalkeeper in the world next year, because if he makes any mistakes, people are going to be, why did we keep him? I just think it's a really tough decision for Ollie. And they probably are going to try and offload De Gea. I mean, imagine if we loan De Gea. If De Gea's going to go, you've got to get the money. You've got to get the money. You can't loan a keeper of that quality and pay him to play for somebody else, like we did with Sanchez. We've got to sell him. If De Gea's going to go, he's got to be sold. You can't loan him. That would be a business disaster, which we're more than capable of doing. But no, I just think that similarly to what Cavani did, it's that world-class experience where so-called leaders in that team bottled it. The real leaders stood up, and I think you can't be removing that sort of a leader from your team at this stage, because if De Gea played well and Maguire and Shaw and Wan-Bissaka and Bailly didn't, next year, if you put Henderson in, does he play as well as De Gea? Well, he hasn't got the experience. Maybe he has a bad game and we go out. So his experience was so important last night. Michael says, sell Henderson, maybe put a buyback clause in. David has given so much for this club and is still quality. Luckhurst will probably drown in his tears, says Michael. Well, it's people like him that have caused the problem in the first place, isn't it? His agenda has caused it, but that's not Henderson's fault. I personally think we should have sold Henderson last year with a buyback clause. I think we would have got about 40 million buyback clause, happy days. But it's a tough decision. It's a tough decision in the summer, and I wouldn't want to have to make it, to be honest, because even if you keep De Gea and Henderson goes off and is fantastic, and De Gea makes a few mistakes, he's backed himself into a corner by doing this stupid thing in the first place. We never should have done this. We never should have gone into the season with 2 great goalkeepers. Hi Mark, do you think we should have a repeated organised protest for the next Man United versus Liverpool match and the next one and the next one? Sean, there's a lot of stuff on social media at the moment. I'll let you know when it's clarified. But I think there is talk of a protest for the Liverpool game next week anyway. I'm sure I've seen something about 6 o'clock. Liam Miles, welcome to the Members Club. And a lot of the saves last night were hit straight at him, says Akram. Sorry, Akram, I'm not going to read the rest of the super chat. You've had that. You know, I think that's disgusting. I think that's absolutely disgusting. So Aram is saying that a lot of the saves were straight at De Gea last night. Okay, well done, mate. You're bitter. I know this isn't Football Manager, but if your board had any balls, they'd get rid of both and get Donnarumma for free. Why, Ryan? He's managed by Raiola. We don't want any more Raiola. Mark, United went through years of trying to replace Schmeichel until Van der Sar was bought. The same happened when he left until De Gea arrived. We're going to realise what we had once he's gone. I know, that's what worries me, Shaneste. If De Gea was performing badly, I'd be like, you know what, maybe now is the time. But he's not. We're actually looking to replace a goalkeeper in his prime with a young goalkeeper. You don't do that. You don't do that. You wait until the keeper that you've got, who is in their prime and is a club great, you wait till they're coming towards the end. Schmeichel went because he was coming towards the end. Van der Sar went because he was coming towards the end. De Gea's not coming towards the end yet. I think it's a big mistake. But look, it's down to Ollie. Was scratching my head why he picks Dino and not De Gea. I came up only with one possibility. Dean suits the defence better because he comes out more. If we go with Magaluf, then Dino will be number one. Well, look, to be honest with you, DK, there are certain players in that United side who want Henderson in goal. And that's all I'm going to say. And you can figure out who they are because it ain't going to be Bruno and Cavani because the goalkeeper to them isn't that important. It's certain players in that dressing room who are basically Team Henderson. Now, those players didn't turn up last night. They didn't play well last night, but De Gea did. So this is what I'm saying. It's all right changing the guard because you prefer playing with another goalkeeper, but be careful about changing the guard too early and be careful about who you're listening to change the guard because you're going to sell a keeper who's got you into the final and listen to people who didn't perform well. So, you know, Ollie needs to be careful on that one. Maybe we can send Henderson out for a couple of loan deals, says Matthew. Look, if it's Henderson in goal next year, it's Henderson in goal next year. We'll all get behind him. I'm just saying it's a dangerous thing when you've had a real eye-opener like last night where basically you've got these players like Cavani and De Gea who basically get you into a final. Well, we've begged Cavani to stay, and I think that's right, even though I didn't think it was right a couple of weeks ago. I do think it's right. And I think we should be doing the same with De Gea because they are very, very important when the going gets tough. And they showed leadership qualities and quality that others couldn't do last night. And that's the difference between being top class and world class. World class players perform world class performances in world class scenarios. Mark, meant to ask before, where did you live in Ireland and how long were you there? 3 years, James, Malahide, north of Dublin. Anyway, look, we will be live at just after 1:30 with Ollie's press conference for the Villa game. I've got no idea how United are going to do this because we are literally going to be playing every 2 days. So it's going to be hectic, really hectic in relation to press conferences and previews and everything. But we have got a press conference for you at 1:30 and we have got the 8 o'clock show tonight. And I will be playing a bit of FIFA later. So that'll be about 3:45. So thanks, everyone. Remember, we're in a cup final. I'm really happy this morning. I'm quite hungover this morning, but I'm really happy. And yeah, interesting times ahead. And as ever, Glazers out. Thanks for watching. Smash a like on the video and I'll speak to you in a bit.